Well, hello and thank you everybody for tuning into our webinar today. My name is Chris Meny. I'm the content manager and director of website development for Go Biotechnology. Go Bio is a supplier of proven, published, and affordable reagents and chemicals for research labs and small businesses all over the world. We specialize in thousands of day-to-day reagents that you need in the lab, but at affordable rates that you can discover more. Check out our website for all of our products at gobio.com. Our webinar today is about how to write a resume. And joining us with some extra advice is Alex Burkhardt. Alex is a strategic intelligence analyst with a strong foundation in marketing, communications, and strategy. He currently serves as a director of marketing for America's Central Port, one of the Midwest's largest freight hubs and economic development engines. Alex also runs a private consulting company called Never Industries that he founded in 2014. He has clients ranging from the agricultural and biotechnology industry to adult and medical cannabis use, to transportation, government, and other B2B organizations. From working with C-level leaders to talents looking for their next big move, Alex provides what he calls the missed opportunity consulting. He has a knack for finding the value in any given product, service, person, or brand, and leveraging that value to resonate with key stakeholders and the decision makers needed to win new business, or in the case of career coaching, to help develop leads and generate attractive offers. Hi, Alex. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you share the screen and let you take it away.
All right.
Great.
All right, guys. Again, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. And I'm just going to jump straight into this. And if you guys have questions as I go along, just free to reach out, and Chris will be on top of that. So starting off, I don't just want to talk about how to build a resume, because at the end of the day, I just talked to a recruiter the other day who told me that, on average, I think it's 7% of jobs are actually obtained through the actual resume process of just applying to whatever's out there. So your resume isn't just for applying to something, say through Indeed or LinkedIn, but it can be a tool that you use when you're doing direct outreach in your networking efforts, via email, or if you meet someone in person and they're asking, after that in-person introduction or Zoom chat or whatever you're doing these days, when they ask for your resume as a follow-up, it's that way to tell your story and really sell whatever your value that you bring to the table. So with that, the general approach that I take to career coaching is very similar to how I tell B2B organizations how to engage, their smart customers. So that first pillar is focusing on your audience and actually knowing who your audience is and who you're speaking to. And then your second part is your brand. So in this case, your resume, your LinkedIn, any type of thought leadership content you're going to develop, anything that really captures you. And then that last part, your message, is that outreach stage. So whether that's the simple applying to the job that's on that job board, or that's finding cold job leads, i.e. recruiters, HR managers, business owners, anybody who has that ability to say yes and get you an interview, messaging them directly via email, LinkedIn outreach, or other social media means. So starting off, knowing your audience. In HR world and the job search world, I split that up into three different categories. The first one's human resource professionals, recruiters and headhunters, and then business owners and leaders. So that first category, when we think about human resource professionals, when you think about, the type of, talking about the academia side, most of them came from a business administration background with an HR management focus. The ones that are higher up the chain, you're looking at organizational psychology and communication skills, but that's their academic background and their focus. If you look at that career track for them, what they're focused on more than anything in that job search process is, do you fit the actual job description itself? But after that, it's going to be, are you an actual good fit for the organization, the culture, the climate? Is it a high risk organization? And do you have that ability to deal with ambiguous situations? in adversity, things of that nature. They're really looking for a little deeper dive of, do you have the soft skills that match whatever that culture or the role is in that organization. So when you're thinking of human resource professionals as an audience, you're typically looking at organizations with, I'd say, about 25 or more employees. A good way to think about it is, does the company have basically the budget and this, a large enough scope of employees where they're going to hire an actual human resource manager to run HR? Definitely any of your larger companies, 100 up, Fortune 500, any of those big organizations, your major biotech firms, they're all going to have HR departments and HR representatives. So that's where you're going to find those people. And when they're posting jobs online, the typical, let's just say, give a 500-person organization, and they post a job for, say, mid-level manager on up type of role, they're probably going to get a few thousand applications. They're typically like your structure in HR. If they have a few people in there, someone's going to have the job of getting that list of a few thousand resumes down to maybe a couple hundred. So when you're writing your resume, you're basically trying to get into that list of a couple hundred. When you're thinking about that, you have about 6 or 7 seconds to capture that attention and get in that list, which means you need to have an easily skimmable resume. And you do that by focusing on keywords and keyword phrases that you find in the job description itself. So if it says you need XYZ technical skills, those technical skills should be on your resume somewhere. And then any type of experience it lists out, as long as it applies to you in some way, shape, or form, make sure those bullet points of experience are embedded in your resume. You're going to do this for 2 reasons. The first one is, larger organizations that have HR departments, they'll have something called applicant tracking software, and those systems are built on the keywords that come from job descriptions. So they're going to try and pick up on that and automatically sort you into a certain pile. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is, then once that physical copy gets in front of a person, is to do the same thing to the point of you've made it to the top 100 resumes and you're going to get an interview. So that's kind of the first, I'd say, audience profile as a human resource professional. The second one to keep in mind are recruiters and headhunters. They're very similar in terms of their background, usually same level of your HR professional, same type of academic route there. I have seen a lot of headhunters that come from the sales world, and I think that's mainly because of what they do. But recruiters and headhunters, the way they differentiate is they're usually more motivated and actually actively looking for talent pretty much at all times. So for some, there are agencies that basically exist across every single industry, specific to outsourcing your recruiting needs. So if you're a large organization, say Express Scripts, for example, they have an internal HR team, but they're staffing so many people, their turnover's somewhat high. With that churn, they have to they outsource some of the recruiting just to help with their current needs internally. So those recruiters are going to be constantly looking for that talent to fill the quotas from the companies they get hired from. And those recruiters get paid usually based on, they'll get the structure of those deals will look like you get a certain amount of money for the contract just to find somebody, but then they also get more money if you stay for 6 months, for a year, and it goes on from there. So they're actually, they do have an interest that's actually motivated by, increased pay to find people that are actually qualified for those roles. So they're not just filling, empty seats per se. So the main thing with this audience to keep in mind is going back to that brand of yours and having a robust online presence. So today, when we're going through how to write your resume, just keeping in mind that you should have a LinkedIn profile. I think it's up to 95% of all HR professionals in the United States are on LinkedIn and use it. So it'd be kind of who do you like? You should be on LinkedIn. Put it that way. But yeah, so where we're going. So yeah, just make sure you have a robust online presence. At a minimum, update your LinkedIn profile, and then at that point, it really just comes down to how much time you want to put into it, what your career goals are. But in terms of opportunities of other content you can publish, if there are trade organizations, not just trade organizations, but trade journals, any type of published content, anything that's going to up your kind of SEO online. So if you're thinking about your name and the skill sets related to you, anything that's going to make it easier for you to be found when people are looking for the like the keywords that are within a job description related to that role you're going to play. So you can imagine if you're a headhunter on the other side and you're trying to find someone to fit a 6-figure ranking job, and you have certain qualifications that you're going to try and Google online and find these individuals, there are certain places you're going to look. You might look for people that have hosted their own TED Talks, people that have been on panel discussions at universities, people that have published any type of content in trade organizations and things of that nature. So sky's the limit on what you can do there. But again, that's all very time intensive. And I'd say closer to the level of if you have a goal to land a very high ranking job or very specific job.
Now, before we talk about that, so when you talk about building out your LinkedIn page, I think that's one of the things that most people have a lot of trouble building that out. So how do you build a LinkedIn page that can be found by a recruiter, right? So do you just copy and paste your whole resume in, or what do you do?
Yeah, so it should definitely be it's slightly different from your resume. You can use a lot of the same material, say for under every single job. You could probably use the same bullet points that are on your resume. There are a few main areas that are going to be different. So the main breakdown of LinkedIn that you want to know is it's built based on call it Boolean search parameters. So in the same way that you can search Google and you can put in say I don't know, mechanical engineer in quotes, and then put in like another set of quotes of what you want. That's how LinkedIn search is built. And it's done that way for recruiters so that they can go in and type in any combination of keyword mix that they want to find the type of talent they want to. The way you build out your profile effectively is you look at job descriptions of roles that you want to apply for, and you identify the key highlighted skills and experience that they're looking for, and you make sure that again is in your LinkedIn. And the way LinkedIn ranks that, so your title, so where you usually put, say for me, I put Director of Marketing, America Central Port. It actually allows for, I can't remember the character count. I think it's above 200 now. But they rank that higher in terms of keyword wise search than other parts of your profile. It basically goes down from there. So like after your title, then it goes to your main, like the intro bio section. And then after that, it gets into your actual experience under each job that you've had. So with that, every single part of LinkedIn that allows you to add more content, you should add content, and you should make use of, trying to get those keywords and those key phrases in there that match up with what you're trying to apply for, because that's how it works on a search engine optimization basis within LinkedIn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. No, that's exactly what I think we need to hear.
Okay. So we good to move on from this slide? All right. So the last audience that I want to talk about our business owners and really any, I'd say, local leader that has a, heads a chamber of commerce, things of that nature that can introduce you to businesses that are hiring. But the main part of this I want to focus on is business owners. So I'd say for any small organization on down, or any small organization, and I say small business, like the way the SBA defines that is anything with 500 employees or less, and I think that's a good mark to use for this. But it's where the CEO or the C-level leadership of an organization are involved enough with their own people in the day-to-day of everything that they're accessible to network with. So the opposite would be a Fortune 500 company. The odds that you're going to go meet the CEO and you're going to get hired from him for a six-figure or under job is very, very low. It just, that's delegated somewhere else. But your smaller businesses, they're a lot more intimate, and those business owners are they have that entrepreneurial mindset, and that's basically their baby. So when you get hired on in their company, there's a good chance they're going to want the right people on the bus. So the reason I bring up this specific set goes back to your outreach efforts. So say the typical way to approach job search and job applications is to go through Indeed, LinkedIn, Monster, whatever those application websites are, and just apply for the jobs that are out there. But again, I had a Zoom chat just last week with former head of recruitment for Express Scripts, who told me to my face that it's about a 7% chance that you're actually going to get hired through an application process, and more likely than not and she said this from her experience with Express Scripts, that they hire more people that reach out to their recruiters and their HR and the people that are actually networking with them than they do through that application process. So with business owners, when you're building that, if you want to go that extra step and you're not having luck just applying to jobs online, what I typically tell clients is that you can go the next step of building your own job lead lists the same way you would in a business development or sales role, which is what I do professionally. So on the career side, just an example of what that looks like, I'm going to speak about manufacturing because that's where my head's at right now. That's what I do job-wise. But I'll just say I could find all the manufacturers in the Southwest Illinois region, just find them all. I'd make that list. I have methods to go and get their contact information. And what I'm after is finding the decision makers in that organization, getting either a phone number or an email. And then once I have that list put together, just going down the line and doing outreach. So if I have emails, then I'm going to make some type of email copy up and send it out to all these organizations, trying to get that first interview. If I don't have email, then I'm going to do phone calls. But it's that direct outreach, trying to network with these people individually and trying to get that interview opportunity. So biggest thing with business owners to remember, if you're applying to them, things that should be in your resume are going to be technical skills, definitely. But the biggest thing that I'd focus on are quantifiable results. Now, I'd say quantifiable anything is good for all these audiences, but business owners and decision makers in an organization are probably going to care about it more than anyone, because you're going to be on their team and they're going to be responsible for your return on investment after they hire you. So what I mean by a quantifiable result is typically what you'll see on a resume is what you were responsible for in your day-to-day job. Most resumes I've seen and read through, when you see the job description or the job title of what they did, for the most part, you can kind of figure out. It's kind of like common knowledge when I see the next line is responsible for XYZ, responsible for XYZ. What I'd rather see in that resume is anything that shows the background of how important that was. If you were responsible for managing, a series of labs, for students, which we're going to get into when we go over the resume examples. Talk about how many students you had per semester, how many classes were that? Was it anything that breaks down that you weren't just managing a group of 5 people, you were managing, a significant amount of responsibility on top of whatever that role was. So things of that nature are really going to spark with business owners and decision makers within organizations because, at least in your, I'd say good organizations, we're all after positive results and a strong return on investment. Any questions?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Can you see this, Chris?
Yep, I can see it. Let's see. Are you trying to click on one of the examples?
I clicked on the example. I'm just
All right.
seeing if
You're probably gonna have to stop the share or stop the share the screen, but stop the
I got you.
presentation mode. There we go.
All right. So this is everybody joining. This is just an example of a resume that hasn't been updated yet, right? And the ones that I've gotten, I'd say this is pretty common. I'm just going to go through it. You got your professional experience, education. The main theme when I see resumes like this is it's just listing out, whatever came to mind. I'm going to kind of word vomit all of my experience onto a couple pages. And then I'm going to send it off, and you know what? It took long enough to do, and I don't want to touch it anymore. I've made too many revisions, and I'm just done with it. I've got it, and now I'm just going to send it off and email it to as many people as possible. I can work sometimes. I guess I'll just say there's more that you can do. I'll get into that shortly. Okay. All right. Can you see this?
Yep, there it is.
All right. So I'll blow it up in a second, but I just want to show kind of an overview of the style of this. The way this is supposed to read is that every single section builds off this section before it. So your professional summary introduces your next level of experience where you list out your technical and soft skills. And then that builds on to your professional experience. But every single section basically builds off the previous section. So it actually reads like you're telling, your story of what your experience actually is.
Nice.
All right. So I'll get into these a little more detail here. All right. So for your first section with your name and contact information, all that good stuff, what I usually recommend is so I use this one for one. I use the same format almost for everyone I work with. I've gotten questions about should it be designed, like have a design element in it. At the end of the day, it always comes back to who you're applying for. If you're a creative and you're trying to get a graphic design degree or job, I imagine there's some design there. My only thing that I tell people is that applicant tracking software that I mentioned earlier with HR companies or HR professionals in large companies is that a lot of times they can't pick up on design elements used in like design elements that aren't normally in Word. So bullet points are fine, but if you've used anything that's foreign to Word, they usually can't pick up on it. And a lot of times it'll just kick your resume out of that pile automatically without even considering it. So with that, I typically say to stick to a Word-based format for any of your designing there. So past that, starting with the beginning here with this, with your name, title, and everything else, your contact info, keep it simple. If you have your name and you have an actual title, I'd say anything beyond like a master's and beyond is worthy of putting after your name. Bachelor's on down, not necessary. And then for your contact info, email, phone number, and then your LinkedIn. If there's anything else that's relevant enough to put there in terms of other, personal website or, I don't know if you're a published author or anything of that nature that makes sense to put in your contact info area. For example, like mine has my Twitter contact on it, because I have enough of a presence and I'm a marketing guy, and that's a thing that we do in our industry. Then put that there. As far as your location, I rarely put them on resumes. We'll put it this way: if you're from St. Louis and you're applying to Colorado, it's a reason for them to kick your resume from that pile because you can't come in that easily for an interview. And I've heard that from recruiters enough to say why, and they don't necessarily need it. They don't need to know that you live nearby. So it's not really something you need to be putting on your resume. And as soon as the other aspect there is, if you have your LinkedIn on there or you reach out to them, if they read over your resume and they take interest, they're going to find it. They're going to find out. I'm just saying that you don't want to give them a reason to stop reading the rest of your resume.
So if you are local, would it be to your advantage then to put that on if you're local and the company is local?
Yeah, I mean, it might be. I don't think it could hurt you, but I see it more as usually when it's listed in your contact info, it's like, I don't really care.
Right. Okay.
So there's going to be so many, but if I'm looking for reasons, that's the thing I should probably say. Recruiters and HR people are looking for reasons to disclude you from that final pile.
Right.
And, don't make your address one of those things.
Right.
So moving on to your professional summary, depends on, I guess, how many years experience, but I'd say anywhere between 2 and 4 lines tops. And it's just pretty much your elevator pitch of what you do and you setting up this should be the intro to what the rest of your resume is going to explain. So when you say, I am this, at a networking event or anything of that nature, this should be that statement that really catches their eye of, this is the type of person we're about to hire. Aim for anything like that first line, accomplished chemist and lab manager with over 7 years of experience in conducting research and analysis, yada, yada, yada. And then proficient in lab management, technical and chemical equipment training. Those are all things that came from this person's job description. So those are in those few lines there, you get in they have more than enough, they match the experience needed for this job, and they have the technical skills that this job lists. And it kind of hints at, okay, they've done this for 7 years. So my guess is that they're going to have the soft skills needed. And you go into your areas of expertise, your core competencies, at a bare minimum. This can be as long, it's going to change for pretty much every person. It just depends on their industry. So I've seen a lot in the engineering space, scientific space, pretty much anything in STEM. But this is going to be split between kind of like sections like this, where you have an areas of expertise and a core competencies, where your core competencies are mainly those soft skills, the management, the actual business side of what you do. and the type, like the role of what you do, whereas your areas of expertise are going to be the actual scientific STEM focus of whatever you bring to the table. So moving on down from that, we'll get into professional experience. So most of this is going to be formatting based, but I'll get into everything. So in this specific example, you have an individual that worked for a university or a PhD, a chemist that worked for a university. So, Bolt using, if you notice, like formatting wise, again, you're just trying to make it easy to skim, easy to read through. So using bold font when necessary helps, just makes it easier to skim through. So you got the university name, city, and the state. And then what I typically do is I'll throw that website link to the actual university in there. If you're a well-known university, great, awesome for you. If you're not, and we were wrong. Like I love my alma mater. I went to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, but anytime I travel, honestly, 50 miles from my school, it's, oh, you mean SIUC in Carbondale, and no, we're different. We're a different school. So it kind of helps to provide anybody that's not familiar with your university or your company or organization just a quick reference to see, oh, all right, this is the company they work for. After that, this kind of background section that I have here, that's to accomplish something similar. So it's to give context to any of the positions you had. So some examples from resumes I've worked on in the past. Had a guy, he's now works for LinkedIn, so the resume worked. But prior to that, he worked for a logistics company, but it was a fairly small logistics company. It was about a 20-person shop, and his title didn't necessarily match the value he brought to the table. So to give context to what that organization did, I told him to just, throw in some quantitative details. In other words, since you're basically working for a very small kind of no-name logistics operation, talk about how your company does 23 million in sales each year, and that you were responsible for. So like when you come down here to your, whatever your title is, if you say that you're responsible for, 15% of sales, that's 15% of $23 million in sales. It changes the context of what you were actually doing. And that helps really anyone that's not going to know where you actually worked or any, intimate knowledge of where you worked. So coming on down to that.
But before you go there, so we had a question about the summary.
Yeah.
So the question is, are there phrases or information in the summary that you would suggest that you should avoid?
So the question is, what should you avoid professional summary?
Are there any phrases or things that they're just either redundant or just kind of boring in the industry? Like are there things that we should avoid saying?
Kind of. I'll answer it in the way that I can. So basically, start with an action word. Never start with I, and that goes for cover letters too. It should always be focused on what you did. I don't want to going back to responsible for XYZ. I don't want to hear what you're responsible for. I want to know what is the value you actually provided for whatever your project, organization, company, whatever it may have been. What did you do? So if you have any type of bragging rights, say that, like, use a word. So when you say accomplished chemist and lab manager, or proficient in, or any type of action word that really sells what you did, that's what you're going to that's what you're going to try and do. You want to kind of position that statement so that it sounds a lot better than just saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. So I think the two takeaways I have from it is one, always use good action verbs, and two, you want to make it a little less um, uh, where you're talking about yourself all the time, right?
Right. And I, happy to talk about cover letters later too. But um, the focus at the end of the day, like, yes, it's selling you, but it really should be a value proposition statement for the organization you're trying to work for. So it should be, um, what is that value you're going to provide to them. It's not about I'm so great, you should hire me. It's this is what you're going to get when you hire me. Does that make sense? That
Right. Yeah,
make sense?
exactly. No, exactly.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when you're applying to a company, you want them to want you.
Right.
You have to show them what it is that you're going to be able to provide for them, and why do they want you, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. Cool. All right. Here's another question I have. So somebody wrote in. They have years of academic experience, but only a little bit of industry experience, which is pretty basic compared to what they have for academic.
Okay.
So they'd like to show that on their resume that they've been in industry, but they don't have really enough industry experience to really feel like they can put that on. So, do you have any suggestions on how to show their short term experience on their resume, but make it look better?
Um, yes, I'd have to consult personally. I think I'm just I'm not
That's
I'm
fair.
not trying to sell too hard here, but the I think like a good example would be, all right, if you just look at the rest of this resume, this is like, all right, so if you had something that was just this long, okay, say like this was your professional experience, and then say your academic experience started right here, okay, in this section here, and then you only had this much of space to fill out with professional experience, I think that'd be fine. I think if anything, it'll show. My I guess my answer to that would be I think I could creatively write it to where it would look uh, like you've done, that there's enough value there.
Right. So like for instance, something I would think is like instead of putting two date terms on there, I would put like 2020 to present, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you started in May.
Yeah,
It could be January, but you're currently ongoing, right? So that's
right.
maybe an option.
That'd be one option, and with if it's ongoing stuff, the experience you list is your projected outcomes. You can talk about what you're about to do, um, and the reason I say you can do that is it really comes back to as long as as long as you can explain it in an interview and actually back it up, then that's totally fine to list as experience because it's kind of like in my own personal experience of my like when I wrote my resume when I worked for myself prior to what I do now. Um, if I'm in the instance where I landed a client but I haven't executed the entire project, I'm still gonna market that client that I landed. I'm still gonna market all that experience because I'm about to accomplish it. I know what I'm gonna do next, and
Right.
that's experience in itself.
Okay. So if that experience then was further in the past,
Yeah,
how do you bring that up to the forefront by just placement, like you're just putting it in a different place?
yeah. So there's a uh, couple things you could do. I'm trying to think. Do they do they have any more details of what they did?
Um, no, not yet. They might add some more information later, but right now that's all I really got to go on yet.
All right. Um, yeah, I feel like I'd need a little bit more information to figure out how to answer that.
All right. Well, there's a link to your website and a way to get a hold of you in the offers At the
Yep.
bottom, if somebody really wants to ask personal questions, I'm sure you'd be happy to reply, right?
Yep. Definitely.
All right. Okay. So then, so we got one more question, and I already kind of know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there anything wrong with having more than one page on your resume?
Depends on how many years of experience you have. Period. So I would say anything less than 7 years, it should probably be a one-page resume.
Wow, really? Okay.
Well, you probably get that down to 5. Like anything less than 5.
Okay. So like I know like for, one of the biggest differences between making a resume and making a CV, right? So in the academic world, everybody talks about CVs. The CV is much more detailed as far as these are the papers I've written and everything, and it just ends up being 2 or more pages once you add in all of your presentations and everything like that. So there, what I would guess is that there's a difference in what kind of job you're looking for, right?
Right. So with a CV, there really isn't a page limit. It's literally, like you said, it's all your experience just listed out. With a resume, though, I think a good way to think about it, I think you kind of mentioned this, is think about the role you're applying for. When I say 5 years or less, I guess you could say I'm going off of the assumption of what most would fall under. Like if you're applying, if you have 5 years or less experience in general, and within that 5 years, you did some pretty amazing things, and you're applying for a job that ranks above, I'd say, 75,000 or 6 figures more a year in an annual income, then yeah, you could probably justify a 2-page resume, but it it should be for the job you're applying for. That kind of comes back to less talking about, hey, I did this, hey, I did this, hey, I did this. Does all that experience is it relevant to what you're actually applying for? And typically, for the jobs you're applying for, when you only have 5 years experience, I'd say kind of management level on down, or like mid-level manager on down, maybe. And yeah, it just, if it's not, if you go back to like the audience profile that you're looking at,
right,
you're gonna spend a significant amount more time on your higher paying individuals during that process. Whereas if you're bringing on somebody, say for, I don't know, $45,000, even $60,000 a year, it's still a decent chunk of change, but you're not, in terms of that resume process and getting it down to a select group of people. You want that to go. You're not gonna read those resumes as closely as the ones for the guy that's bringing in 150,000 a year.
Right, exactly. And like you were saying with HR, a lot of times the HR person, they're either feeding it through a system to find the keywords, but most times they're really only looking at that resume for 6 to 7 seconds on tops. If you have a 7-page resume, then it's going right in the trash.
Pretty much, yeah. Because it will, and then it gives off another impression of, really, you go past 2, you're really, I don't know, that's, to me, is just wrong. It just seems like this person's going to talk about themselves the entire time, and I don't personally want to read that. I want to know, again, I'm going to keep saying it over and over again, but what is that value that you bring to the table? How is that going to impact my organization and help us achieve our goals?
Right. All right, that's cool.
So, guess kind of try to move on, or?
Yeah, by all means.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna finish talking about that. So let's see here.
I got you completely off topic.
Yeah, that's cool. I should be good in a little bit. All right, so just using this as purely as an example. So say you have research projects, listing them out in the how is this? List out different research project. Yeah. So again, when it comes back to like your experience and the jobs you're applying for, um, maybe like having a CV with legitimately all of your experience on it for, however many pages that is. I've talked to plenty of recruiters that when you have a wide variety of experience and you have a lot of different roles that you are qualified to apply for, is having multiple resumes. So what I mean by that is in your research projects, if you've done, if you have, I guess, different fields of expertise, and you're a chemical, I don't know, you have experience in chemical engineering and you have experience in mechanical engineering, more likely than not, you're not going to find a role that does both. It's going to be one or the other. So having that already typed out somewhere so you can plug and play and put it into the resumes you want to apply to those different roles. So for under research projects, I'm suggesting is if it applies to if there's some type of industrial or commercial application of what you did, and you can talk about that to some degree, include that in your resume. Just provide a brief scope of what that was. If you have links to, any supporting materials, whether that's the thesis you published or, any of that, any type of content, you can always hyperlink to it just to show. I'm not saying they're going to read your 150 to 200 page thesis, but it'll at least show, oh, wow, that guy wrote a very long, like he did the work. It just shows more credibility behind whatever you did. People tend to assume that you did the work. It's horrible to say, but it's kind of true. The instructor teaching assistant side. So I don't know. I feel like this might be a lot of repeat, but going down to, so I guess how this is organized is, again, if you're coming from a university, and this is kind of the same for any type of organization. Say you've worked for the same organization for a significant amount of time, and you've had multiple roles that are different from each other, or even if you were in the same role but that had different applications, you can separate your resume by using these sub blue bold headings and say, so everything under this university, under this organization, these are my research projects. This is a role I had, and these are the years, that I had that role. And you can split this up however you want. So if you had, maybe you were a manager of one division, and then 4 years later, you're a manager of a different division, you might split those up to show that you took two different, roles during the tenure of your time at that organization. So with that, so going to this like instructor, teaching assistant, how to quantify that and how to market that the right way. So this kind of first area here, like your first bullet point, to me should be a summary of pretty much the stuff you're responsible for. So I know earlier I said, stay away from saying responsible for so many times. I'm not saying you can't use it. I'm just saying don't make every single bullet point responsible for this, responsible for that, responsible for that. And I say that I just did a resume this past weekend, and that's exactly what the entire resume was. Every single bullet point started with responsible for. It's you don't want that in your resume. So what you can do here is just have something kind of meaty. I'd say, a bullet point that is 2 to 3 lines here is worth it. If you're going to summarize all of that, well, let's just say in a previous resume, one that has it listed like that, where it's like responsible for this for 7 lines. If you can summarize that in 2 to 3 lines, that saves recruiters and HR managers a lot of work, and it gives them a full picture of that's what this guy did in this specific role. Every bullet point after that is the actual quantified work that you did. So talking about, and again, these were just examples that I made up of manage between, say, like 3 and 7 labs and 12 classes each semester over the course of 8 years, with 25 plus students in each class and lab experiments with chemical compounds such as X, Y, and Z. And basically anything that gives that employer the idea of the level of responsibility you're capable of managing. I mean, it really just comes down to, if you were to just say responsible for lab management, grading papers, and things of that nature, the thought that comes into my head, if you went to college and graduated college, you might have a teaching assistant in your mind, and maybe you didn't have a good experience with them, or maybe you have an idea, like you're going to typecast what that role is and maybe write it off and say, oh, that's not actually that big a deal. You don't want whoever's reading your resume to do that and typecast you into whatever role you were in. So in order to do that, you pull out any of these soft skills or anything that can be quantified to make that bullet point sound a lot more valuable. And in doing that, it also transfers to, if you're applying for a management level role or really just applying for anything in that organization, I mean, something like this shows me that you can take on multiple assignments at one time. You can handle a lot. You can, it's going to there's parts of this that tell me, just infer the aspect of things happen. Crisis happens. If you're managing that much, things aren't going to always go smoothly. So if you've done that over the course of 8 years, my guess is that you have, you have enough interpersonal skills to manage all of that. There's a lot about that one line that comes across as, wow, this person really knows what they're doing. And then let's see. This is something the other resume, they had something on there about, projects that were actually with industry partners, or, projects that they helped students do, things of that nature. If there's anything that stands out, again, if it's noteworthy or worth sharing, add that in. Let's see here. I'd say the other aspect, and we kind of mentioned it earlier, was just the, using action words, worked with, advised, conducted, provided, managed, just making sure each one of those has some type of power behind it of, I did this for the organization I was with. This was the outcome. And again, you're just trying to, like I mentioned earlier, where each section builds off the previous section, your skills that you list should be embedded throughout your resume. I'm not saying the actual keyword, but there should be an example, like a clear example. So this one I mentioned here, where just how this line is written, captures about half of the skills listed above in this resume. So that's what you're trying to do when you write out bullet points under each level of experience. And that goes back to when somebody interviews you, so you do actually land the interview, your resume is basically that guide for your interview. You can probably bet that they're going to read through it and ask you about every single bullet point, or at least use that as a reference to guide the conversation. So it's another way for you to kind of engineer how that interview goes for you. And then, so like a section like this, special projects, if there's anything that you wouldn't necessarily put on a resume, or you wouldn't think to put on a resume, like extracurricular activity, or community, anything related in that sense, or even like special projects, side hustles you're working on, by yourself. Maybe it's a book you're in the process of writing and publishing. anything of that nature. As long as it speaks to some type of value related to the job you're applying for, I think that's definitely worthy of putting on a resume. It shows kind of ingenuity and entrepreneurship. And to me, that's attractive across the board between HR professionals and business owners, because it shows that problem solving side. So that's just another little aspect that I like to tell people of, feel comfortable as long as it, applies. Hold on one second. Hey, hold on, middle something. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. That's the value of working from home in today's society, right?
Yep. Yep.
Well, so let me toss out a couple of things. So I know there was once upon a time in my career and life experience that people talked about, your resume had to be flashy, it had to be fun, it had to be exciting, had to get that attention.
Yep.
Is that really gone? Is it back to just being words on a page now? Or is that something that can still have some merit?
I mean, again, I go back to, I guess, who you're applying to. I'm very, I'd say that it goes with kind of how I coach clients. It's very based on a value-driven approach, because it's also how I coach on salary negotiation. And when you're value driven, you see past the flashiness stuff. So when I pick up a resume that has a lot of it has a lot of design elements in it, my first thing, if it's easier to read, I guess that's one aspect of it.
Right.
But past that, if it's all flat, like in other words, if you put a lot of flash in it, I don't know. I think you told me that our audience, though, we have a lot of academics. I think of the time that I was a student and what I did to try and turn in papers that didn't have a lot. Like basically, you're adding fluff. I don't think you should add fluff. You should add, just get to the straight facts and give me the actual value. I think anytime you add in too many design elements, that's what's going to come across as, oh, they put this here. Is there actually anything of value in the rest of the resume?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for anything professional, they want to know. They really just want that value, and they want it as quickly as possible, because it's also an appreciation of their time, and also kind of shows that I don't know, it's that clean cut. This is the type of person I'm going to get as well.
Right. So then, as another question, then, do you recommend PDFing your resumes? So you said you write them in Word. Do you recommend only ever sending the PDF versions to your clients?
Yeah. So when I rewrite resumes for people, I'll send like a Word copy and a PDF copy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you apply anywhere, send them by email, whatever you do, always send it via PDF.
Okay. Why is that?
They mainly because you don't know the word processor that your recruiter or whoever's looking at the resume is using, or if they're looking at it on their phone, or whatever that hardware is. And with that, PDFs will show up the same across every device. It'll show up in the design that you put it in. So, for example, if what I'm looking at right now is Google Documents, right? If you design in Google Docs and it is the formatting is made so that, say, you're barely on one page or barely on two pages, like you had to play around with the spacebar and the tabs a little bit, or the margins, to try and make it fit on those one or two pages. If you switch over to Word, depending on if you're in Mac OS or on a PC, that doesn't always work. It'll sometimes push it to the next page, and you will have just sent somebody a resume that's on one page and a tenth, and that doesn't work too great. So
formatting really matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. So if you want the formatting the way it was designed, then you should always save it in PDF and send it as PDF.
Right. Well, that's good to know.
Yep.
All right.
And then past that, the only other thing on here is education. This is all formatting stuff. And then awards and professional associations, anything of that nature, just kind of list out here at the bottom. And that's all I got.
All right. And I know a lot of people want to put on the end of their end of the resume personal contacts or contacts available upon request. Is that? And I noticed you didn't do that here. Is that something you would suggest not putting on those resumes?
Yeah, I'd never put it on there because it's repetitive.
Right.
I would assume that they're available upon request.
Right.
I mean, if they're not, you can't talk to anyone I work with.
All right. Well, that's pretty good. Is like, so are you ready for me to jump off topic a little bit?
Oh yeah, I'm done going through this. We can open it up to questions or
sure
do what you want to do.
All right. So let's talk about the cover letter of a resume, right? So there's a lot of places I know. My job in particular, when we ask for resumes, we always ask for a cover letter to be included. What is your opinion about cover letters? What's the difference between the cover letter and the resume? What's the goal of either as opposed to the other?
Right. So cover letter should definitely not be just a repeat of your resume. The best way to look at a cover letter is you really making that value proposition explanation to your employer. So what I typically do when I write them, and I don't currently have that, I guess I could format that as a service, but I look at the mission statement, the vision statement, basically the about section of a company's website. If it's, you can get into as many details as you want. You can go as far as reading their SEC 10K form, figuring out their annual statement, and figuring out these are the objectives and most likely target audience or target markets you're going to go into, and speaking to that in the actual cover letter. It shows you want to show that you did your research on that organization and that you're trying to make a value-based proposition to them to say, hey, really excited about this opportunity. I believe that based on my experience in whatever it may be, that I can add, or that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of examples off my head, but I'm going to back up from that and not try to do that because it's too hard. Trying to just craft copy off the top of my head. But yeah, at the end of the day, it really is just a longer value proposition statement to that organization.
Okay. And so I know you mentioned soft skills and you put them on the resume that you had on that you were showing, but should the soft skills be in that cover letter, or where would you rather put those, in the resume or the cover?
So yeah, soft skills should be in the resume.
Okay.
So if there's anything you're mentioning, like again, you might not say the actual, when I say soft skills, leadership management, conflict management, any type of communication, composure under pressure, any type of management, anything that relies on dealing with other people, or your own management of self, organization, attention to detail, accuracy, all those type of things fall under what we call soft skills.
Right.
Any of that type of stuff. If there's anything specific you want to point to, say, for example, like trying to think of, I didn't do a cover letter per se, but I did plenty of follow-up emails with Port Authority, with where I work now, and I'd use a similar copy of that, which was, based on, really excited to work for your organization. Can't wait for the opportunity I think that I can really bring value by engaging and then saying those specific audiences, like talking to specifics that is in that job description, and then saying, I'm going to execute that for you, because that puts you on the line to actually be responsible for that job rather than just saying, hey, I can do the job, and then trust me, I can do it. It comes across more of, no, kind of give me the ball and I'll provide results for you.
Right. So again, it's adding in a lot of that action verb. It's really taking authority. It's taking command of the role that you want. Right.
Yep.
And so, all right. So when we talk about you got your HR, your entrepreneur, and your headhunter, are there differences in how you emphasize your soft skills versus your quantitative skills between those three audiences?
A little bit, yeah. Your HR. I'm going to start with business owners. So anything on the entrepreneurship side, or the person that owns it or the decision maker, anybody in charge of results, whether that's sales based, operational based, whatever it may be, speaking to how do you say this? I'll say value added, but trying to think of different soft skills. I'm looking more for what make exceptional team members. Whereas like HR might look at kind of like generic ones, like, oh, they're good with teams, or they have interpersonal experience, or, oh, great, they could also do, PowerPoint presentations and manage their own written communication. Like they don't need a personal assistant. Like they might be looking for more of just, oh, this person's a more versatile individual. Whereas your business owners and decision makers are going to want exact proof that speak to, no, this guy's an actual, this person's managed 50 people at one time, or their conflict and negotiation style is pretty apparent just by reading their resume.
Right.
I think they're going to want more. I'd say they're kind of after the same soft skills. I just think the business owner audience is going to be after more legitimate examples rather than them just being listed at the beginning of your resume.
Right. Okay. And what about the headhunters?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a trick question or anything, but it's going to be based on the client. So I don't know if I went into this too much, talked about recruiters, but with headhunters, they're typically hired for jobs that gross 75,000 plus, which 75,000 is really at the bottom of that, because they get a percentage of whatever the salary is usually how their contract is set up.
Right.
So they're more inclined to go after 6-figure on up jobs. Well, with that, they're given a very specific set of criteria from the organization, and I'd kind of group them in the same category as the business owner, if not more, because that's their reputation. So if you're reaching out to a business owner specifically, that's one-on-one. All I have to do is win over that business owner. If you're trying to win over a headhunter, you have to be so good that, when you make a referral for somebody, that's your name on the line.
Right.
That's basically that relationship with that headhunter, because you have to win over the headhunter and the organization.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's a whole different level, isn't it?
Yep.
So then, all things considered, how many different kinds of resumes would you keep on file?
Really, just, I mean, in general, I know I mentioned that, like, having a master one, that's one you can just kind of keep in general, is keep like a master one that maybe goes beyond that 2-page limit if you have a ton of experience. And then when it comes to applying, using that one and narrowing it down to a 1 to 2 page resume.
Right. Well, that's kind of cool. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're a little bit over time, but that's okay. I think as long as everybody has enjoyed it and had got a lot of out of the talk. I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been great talking with you again. And then just to all of our listeners who are still listening, Alex will, or very well possibly, could be sending out a follow-up email after the webinar in case anyone is interested in resume assistance or career advice. So just to let you know, he might be sending it out, and we will be sending out a review email so you guys can click on this and listen to it whenever you like. Well, thank you very much, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, then we'll sign off and have a good day.